Give me a minute. I want to respond to Rob's comment here because it's a good comment, right? Or it's a good question. He says, "I wonder how these figures, meaning the figures of Russian losses in Ukraine, can be true. How can they unalive so many orcs while not having enough ammunition? How is that plausible?" And it's a great question. The first thing to do is to understand the terrain. Take a look at this shot from a recent advance of the Russian forces on Novo-Mykolivka, in which an unknown number of armored vehicles were destroyed. Do you see it's this flat, open steppe? It's farmland, very little woods, very little hiding places. Unless you've constructed fortifications to hide behind, which is where the Ukrainians are, you got to go out in the open. Now, you can't even tell how many armored vehicles were destroyed in this particular assault because the Russians have made so many advances along this open road that there's so many dead vehicles already, you can't tell which ones were lost in this assault and in the last one. And remember, every one of those armored personnel carriers is carrying at least 10 men inside. And often you see them riding on the roofs as well. A lot of times there's unmounted infantry walking along with the vehicles, just exposed, open to cluster munitions. I can't even imagine what a nightmare this must be for everybody involved. The Ukrainians don't have enough ammunition to push the Russians back. The Ukrainians don't have enough ammunition to even hold the Russians where they are. Despite these enormous losses that you can see right here on this field of battle, the Russians are advancing in the Novo-Mykolivka arena. Since October, they've advanced about 700 meters. Now, I know that's crazy, right? Not even a kilometer in 4 months and thousands of casualties. But this is how they're doing it. Meat waves, what they call meat waves, using it's like storming the castle. You just send all your men in there and you hope you have enough to overwhelm the forces. We saw a situation in the Avdiivka direction as Avdiivka was falling to the Russians, where 2 men held off, eliminated 100 Russians that attacked their position. 2 men with 50 caliber machine guns held off, destroyed 100 Russians and then escaped themselves. They were able to withdraw under fire with the assistance of, it wasn't the 47th Mechanized Brigade. They were in the 47th Mechanized Brigade. I apologize. I forget who came to their aid. But at any rate, I think, Rob, this is why it's insane. I mean, it's just the NATO troops, American troops, we would never do this. We would never do anything like this. Even what we've asked the Ukrainians to do all of this defense without close air support, we would never do that. The fact that Ukraine stands in the face of these assaults is nothing but evidence that Ukraine is doing the impossible every day. And we ought to give them a hand. If you're an American, I'll tell you, please reach out to your congressperson and insist on a discharge petition to bring the foreign aid bill to the floor for a vote. Mike Johnson is holding it up until March 22nd at the earliest. He's going to do everything he can to delay a vote on that bill. No matter how much pressure we put on him, we got to get around him somehow. Thanks, pal. It's a great question. I hope that makes sense. If you got a follow-up, put it in the comments.